landmark 1994 crime bill, the Violence Against Women's Act. Joe has always made sure that he is fighting on behalf of working families. And I think he shares my core values and my sense of where the country needs to go. Because after 8 years of failed policies, he and I both agree that what we're going to have to do is to reprioritize, make sure that we're investing in the American people, give tax cuts not to the wealthiest corporations, but give them to small businesses and give them to individuals who are struggling right now, make sure that we finally get serious about energy independence, something that has been languishing in Washington for 30 years, and make sure that our kids get a great education and can afford to go to college. So on the key issues that are of importance to American families, Joe Biden's always been on the right side, and I think he will make an outstanding president if, heaven forbid, something happened to me.
Senator.
Well, Americans have gotten to know Sarah Palin. They know that she's a role model to women and other reformers all over America. She's a reformer. She took on a governor who was a member of her own party when she ran for governor. When she was ahead of their Energy and Natural Resources Board, she saw corruption, she resigned. And said, this can't go on. She's given money back to the taxpayers. She's cut the size of government. She negotiated with the oil companies and faced them down a $40 billion pipeline of natural gas that's going to relieve the energy needs of the of what they call the lower 48. She's a reformer through and through. And it's time we had that breath of fresh air coming into our nation's capital and sweep out the old boy network and the cronyism that's been so much a part of it that I've fought against for all these years. She'll be my partner. She understands reform. And by the way, she also understands special needs families. She understands that autism is on the rise. We got to find out what's causing it, and we've got to reach out to these families and help them and give them the help they need as they raise these very special needs children. She understands that better than almost any American that I know. I'm proud of her, and that she has ignited our party and people all over America that have never been involved in the political process. And I can't tell you how proud I am of her and her family. Her husband's a pretty tough guy, by the way, too.
Do you think she's qualified to be president?
You know, I think that's going to be up to the American people. I think that obviously she's a capable politician, has, I think, excited a base in the Republican Party. And I think it's very commendable, the work she's done on behalf of special needs. I agree with that, John. I do want to just point out that autism, for example, or other special needs, will require some additional funding if we're going to get serious in terms of research. That is something that every family that advocates on behalf of disabled children talk about. And if we have a across-the-board spending freeze, we're not going to be able to do it. That's an example of, I think, the kind of the use of the scalpel that we want to make sure that we're funding some of those programs.
Do you think Senator Biden is qualified?
Well, I think that Joe Biden is qualified in many respects, but I do point out that he's been wrong on many foreign policy and national security issues, which is supposed to be his strength. He voted against the first Gulf War. He voted against it, and obviously we had to take Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait, or it would have threatened the Middle Eastern world supply. In Iraq, he had this cockamamie idea about dividing Iraq into 3 countries. We're seeing Iraq united as Iraqis. It's tough, hard, but we're seeing them. We're now about to have an agreement for status of forces in Iraq coming up. There are several issues in which, frankly, Joe Biden and I openly and honestly disagreed on national security policy, and he's been wrong on a number of the major ones. But again, I want to come back to, you know, notice every time Senator Obama says, we need to spend more. We need to spend more. That's the answer. Why do we always have to spend more? Why can't we have transparency, accountability, reform of these agencies of government? Maybe that's why he's asked for sought and proposed $860 billion worth of new spending, right, and wants to raise people's taxes in a time of incredible challenge and difficulty and heartache for the American
Let's go to a new topic here. We're running a little behind. Let's talk about energy and climate control. Every president since Nixon has said what both of you have said. Climate change, yes. Has said what both of you have said, and that is we must reduce our dependence on foreign oil. When Nixon said it, we imported from 17 to 34% of our foreign oil. Now we're importing more than 60%. Would each of you give us a number, a specific number of how much you believe we can reduce our foreign oil imports during your first term? And I believe the first question goes to you, Senator McCain.
I believe we can, for all intents and purposes, eliminate our dependence on Middle Eastern oil and Venezuelan oil. Canadian oil is fine. By the way, when Senator Obama said he would unilaterally renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Canadians said, yeah, and we'll sell our oil to China. You don't tell countries you're going to unilaterally renegotiate agreements with them. We can eliminate our dependence on foreign oil by building 45 new nuclear power plants right away. We can store and we can reprocess. Senator Obama will tell you, as the extreme environmentalists do, it has to be safe. Look, we've sailed Navy ships around the world for 60 years with nuclear power plants on them. We can store and reprocess spent nuclear fuel, Senator Obama, no problem. So the point is, with nuclear power, with wind, tide, solar, natural gas, with development of flex fuel, hybrid, clean coal technology. Clean coal technology is a key in the heartland of America that's hurting rather badly. Right. So I think we can easily, within 7, 8, 10 years, if we put our minds to it, we can eliminate our dependence on the places in the world that harm our national security if we don't achieve our independence from it.
All right. Can we reduce our dependence on foreign oil, and by how much in the first term, in 4 years?
I think that in 10 years, we can reduce our dependence so that we no longer have to import oil from the Middle East or Venezuela. I think that's about a realistic time frame. And this is the most important issue that our future economy is going to face. Obviously, we've got an immediate crisis right now, but nothing's more important than us no longer borrowing $700 billion or more from China and sending it to Saudi Arabia. It's mortgaging our children's future. Now, from the start of this campaign, I've identified this as one of my top priorities, and here's what I think we have to do. Number one, we do need to expand domestic production. And that means, for example, telling the oil companies the 68 million acres that they currently have leased that they're not drilling, use them or lose them. And I think that we should look at offshore drilling and implement it in a way that allows us to get some additional oil. But understand, we only have 3 to 4% of the world's oil reserves, and we use 25% of the world's oil, which means that we can't drill our way out of the problem. And that's why I focused on putting resources into solar, wind, biodiesel, geothermal. These have been priorities of mine since I got to the Senate, and it is absolutely critical that we develop a high fuel-efficient car that's built not in Japan and not in South Korea, but built here in the United States of America. We invented the auto industry, and the fact that we have fallen so far behind is something that we have to work on. Now, I just want to make one last point, because Senator McCain mentioned NAFTA and the issue of trade, and that actually bears on this issue. I believe in free trade, but I also believe that for far too long, certainly during the course of the Bush administration, with the support of Senator McCain, the attitude's been that any trade agreement is a good trade agreement. And NAFTA did not have enforceable labor agreements and environmental agreements. And what I said was we should include those and make them enforceable. In the same way that we should enforce rules against China manipulating its currency to make our exports more expensive and their exports to us cheaper. And when it comes to South Korea, we've got a trade agreement up right now. They are sending hundreds of thousands of South Korean cars into the United States. That's all good. We can only get 4,000 to 5,000 into South